I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Say things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook, baby.
So Ben is back. I don't want to say like that I'm glad to see you again.
No,
but
of course not.
I will say you're here. So I think that's
That's objectively true.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that you didn't burn the podcast down.
kept the place nice and warm for you.
Yeah. And I also see that you got the denim memo.
Oh yeah, I got that memo. Yeah.
All right, denim dragons.
Yeah, it's like, you know how women, when they're in a group, like their periods kind of like,
yeah, we denim up. Our denim syncs up.
Exactly. So
my brother in college, he lived with a bunch of dudes, and there was a bunch of girls who were living across the street. He ended up marrying one of them. They're divorced now, but yeah, they would go when the house would sync up. Like all the women got on their period, they'd call it Shark Week. Very funny.
That's good.
Yeah,
I mean, that's terrible, Ben.
Yeah,
that's a mean thing to say about.
I didn't fucking say it. It was those dumbasses. But anyway, yeah, I'm back. I was in the motherland.
New Jersey. Yeah. Nobody gives a shit, dude. I keep telling you.
Yeah, that's my real motherland. No, I was in Italy for
nice
3 weeks. It was lovely.
So and you got to go to the museum of what's his face of
that's right, in the museum
Dario Argento.
Oh yeah, speaking of which, I did. So it's called Profondo Rosso, deep red. That's what it means in Italian. That's what it's called in Italian. And I got a poster, 30 years. 1989 to 2019, so of course that's old now. It's 35 years, but it's pretty cool, right? I'm trying to put it in the screen. There he is.
Yeah,
it is cool. So it's a real store in Rome. Profondo Rosso. I don't really know why they have Star Wars stuff in this. I actually didn't even notice that really till just now. They didn't really connect. There's nothing Star Wars there. It's all horror stuff, obviously. I mean, so if you don't know who he is, Dario Argento is definitely the most famous Italian horror director. I wouldn't say the most famous director, that'd be Fellini, but the most famous horror director who basically created or personified the film Giallo. We did a whole episode on that subgenre in the Horror Fest this year, so go check out that. It's probably like 6-7 episodes back now. And so he has a little store in Rome. It's very cool. It's like a lot of not like books, posters, action figures, movies, CDs. So that's like a typical kind of store. Horror paraphernalia, memorabilia, whatever you want to call it. But what's also very cool about, which I didn't know when I went there, and then the people, the owners there asked me, they're like, do you like film Giallo? I'm like, yeah, of course, that's why I'm here. And they're like, well, there's a museum in the basement. And I'm like, do you want to go? It's like €5 each. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll do it. Which also like a little creepy. Like we're the only people in there. They're actually filming something there that day. I don't know what, but there's a film crew in there, maybe some like local thing. But we go downstairs and there's real like mannequins or props from his movies down there. Now there weren't any that I had seen that we had done. I watched like 3 or 4 this year, but there was very creepy. It was like a pretty scary little museum because it is just like creepy shit behind like bars. Nothing pops out at you or anything. I'm like, something pops out at me, I'm pissed. Like I didn't sign up for some like interactive thing, but nothing does. But it's very creepy. There's at the end, there's apparently the scene from one of the movies with a girl strapped to a table and all these like religious crazy people kind of ripping her apart. There's some like creepy monster girl behind a cage, some other cool shit. But if you're into if you're into these movies or you're just like horror in general, I would definitely check it out if you're in Rome.
Yeah.
I think I got something else there, but I can't remember. I kind of forgot I even got this poster. I wanted to buy some poster that was behind the counter, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's not for sale." It was this really cool like retro poster though. But anyway, yeah, Italy was sweet. We went all over, and one of the topics for today is going to be museums. Do you have any other questions before we get into that?
No, I don't think I care that much about your life to.
Right. Okay. Did you want to touch on any of the current events that have taken place since?
Yeah, there's been some big stuff happening. It's some big crazy controversies.
Yeah. There's a guy just like acting like the Joker, shooting CEOs.
Speaking of Italy, his name's Luigi too, isn't it?
Yeah. The memes have been, look, I don't, obviously killing is bad.
Yeah.
Really gross. And this guy had a family. He, no one, like, we can't have extrajudicial killings like that. That's not in self-defense or justified in any way. Of course, some people would argue that, but like, it's really sick. I'm not even gonna say, but that being said, like, I can get the frustration with these insurance companies, especially like health insurance, where a lot of these people are in their like lowest, darkest moments. They have pain or they're loved. Like basically, I don't think I need to convince anyone here, especially after COVID, like how fucked up hospitals and health insurance providers can be, and big pharma and whatever you want to call it. Again, not condoning killing at all in any way. Yeah. But it's, I don't know, man. It's like you start to get it that like it's almost like I'm surprised this shit hasn't happened earlier. Right. Especially when this is this provider, when they are a provider and an insurance company, they have like the highest claim denial rate, and it's like that's not like you go to get surgery or whatever it is, whether it's emergency or not. It's like, oh well, we're just not going to pay for this. You have to. It's like, no, you're also paying in money, to them, and then they're still denying it. And I'm probably simplifying this too much. This guy, deserves to be behind bars. I'm not saying he's a hero by any means. I think it's kind of gross how some people are like fetishizing him. It's because he's hot and Italian. I get it, but my bigger concern is like with any sort of vigilante justice, as sometimes as appealing as it might be, it's like, okay, but what about the next time someone kills someone thinking that they're doing the right thing, and it like is much more sympathetic? It's like we can't have that. We just start like people just start killing people because they're we're transfiguring this guy who this time it's not the most sympathetic victim, still a victim, has a family, really gross, and I feel for them. But the next time it's like people are just gonna start using this as an excuse to kill any sort of even perceived injustice, and that's not like that's a recipe for one, like bedlam and unnecessary violence, and then like a even stronger crackdown on the order side, usually the right, but just order in general, that no one else wants either.
Right. Yeah, it's it was a pretty disturbing story, but Taylor Lorenz, have you seen her reaction?
Yeah, dude, she's I think she's broken. Like she seems like a broken person.
She comes off so much like she just comes off as very like, I don't know, like socio like what the technical term is, whether sociopathic or psychotic or whatever. But just like so when she was on Piers Morgan, I don't know if you saw that clip where he brought that up, and she said that that's why it brought me so much joy to see that CEO killed. It's like it brought you joy to see somebody killed.
That's so gross.
And she's just very like cavalier about it, and it's like, okay.
And meanwhile, she's someone like she went to like a private school in Switzerland. Like she comes from big money. So does this guy, by the way, which doesn't surprise me at all. And his politics are not like the typical what you would think progressive. Like he actually has some views that like are actually very popular on the right, especially like the new right, the kind of the views that I agree with. It's confusing. Yes, it's confusing, and that's because people are multifaceted and comprehensive. And it's not so simple as like, oh, you know, but basically it doesn't surprise me that he's also from like a super wealthy family in Maryland. Big week for Italian Americans, because Daniel Penny also, as it comes out, that he's also Italian American. His name was anglicized. It's like Daniele Penne or something, like the pasta. At least I think I should probably check that. I don't know if that's just going around the internet. I didn't do any research on that, but people are showing like, you know, like the name Penne is like very popular in like Lombardy, like the north of Italy, and then Mangione is like very popular in like Sicily and the south of Italy.
Right.
Like the full spectrum of Italians, like blonde hair, blue eyes, and like curly hair, olive skin, and big week for Italian Americans. Because Daniel Penny, you know, that is, although I completely defend him and support him, and you know, believe that it was completely motivated. Completely like politically motivated prosecution, and that there's like 1,000 people like not Daniel Penny, the guy himself who died there. It was I'm blanking on his name, the victim there, whatever his name, whatever I'm blanking on his name. Like he punched like a 70-year-old woman in the face and like sent her to the hospital or something. I have no sympathy for this guy. That being said, I'm not like going back to Taylor Lorenz, like finding joy in him dying. Like as much as unsympathetic as I find him, how I think he should be removed from society, not killed, but removed because he's a menace, creates unnecessary violence and victims all around him, and was acting menacing and frightening and saying he doesn't care if he dies, spends his life in prison. That being said, I don't think he should die. And that's the difference. And Taylor Lorenz saying like, I find joy in watching some guy get like murdered in cold blood is bizarre. Like she's had crazy shit recently, like where she said calling breathing without a mask raw dogging the air. Like what is wrong with this person?
She's crazy. So there have been a lot of hilarious memes around her and that Luigi guy. Like there were some like ones where he's the Joker and she's Harley Quinn. Because like, you know, in the source material they have like this sort of like weird abusive relationship, so it's like she becomes like kind of like weirdly obsessed with him. So there have been some hilarious memes around that, but you know, in cases like the Penne thing, I mean, you know, even when it's like, this person was a clear threat, and you know, self-defense was justified. It's still a tragedy. It's still like, you know, I feel bad for that person because like, you know, that's whatever happened, whether it was because of like mental issues or just, you know, shitty life circumstances and it led to that. It's like, I don't want to like,
also tragedy for Daniel Penny too, and like
exactly,
there's like he has to, even though he was acquitted by a New York City jury, rightfully so, like he's still gonna get death threats for the rest of his life. He still was like doing the right thing, trying to protect innocent people that he didn't have to do, which is not his job. It's the job of the NYPD and the shitty government there, even though they're better than the last one. Like they're still shitty and the politics are terrible, and it's their fault, and they put this person and people like him in these positions all the time. Like anyone who's spent any significant time in New York City will tell you similar stories to Jordan Neely's his name, to the Penny Neely interaction. Like I was just hanging with my friend. Like my friend was coming to visit me. He lived downtown. I was uptown, and he came to our apartment, and he was like, dude, I said this terrible experience. There was this guy who was like, basically he was describing exactly what Jordan Neely was doing, and he was again like some black woman got in his face and was like yelling at him, and it's like, and like I'm standing there like, holy shit, am I gonna have to intervene in this? Like he was acting like a crazy fucking person, and they were just littered throughout Manhattan and New York City at large, and it's really sick. And so it's a tragedy all around. I'm trying to look up, is he Italian? It's not, because that's what's important here. If he's a paisano, I can't find it, but that was going around. Again, I don't know if that was legit or not. I shouldn't just take it off Twitter, but for you know, for the story's take for fun, I'm just gonna say he is. And go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, so speaking of Italians, so you were hanging out with a bunch of them, for like 3 weeks, right? So I heard that they're like, you know, throughout the history of like art, Italy's done a a little bit, right? They've contributed some things. They've got some museums and
they've hung their shingle.
So did you see anything, any cool like artsy stuff? Did you do museums, galleries? Yeah, tell me about it.
Dude. Yeah, so in let's see, so Florence, I did the Uffizi, which is the big one. That's like the big Renaissance museum in Italy.
Nice.
And it's wonderful. Off the top of my head, Caravaggio is probably one of my favorites. He did Bacchus, which is one of Young Bacchus, I think it's called, which is one of my favorite paintings. I mean, there's so many paintings of Jesus and Mary. Yeah. It's like nonstop. Yeah, Caravaggio is great.
Yeah, he's the one where he did stuff like he started with like a black canvas and then there's like a lot of shadow in his work. Isn't it? Yeah, no, his stuff is really cool, really dramatic, very moody and passionate. I love that stuff.
Yeah, he's kind of like one of the epitomes of Renaissance art. I mean, all the heavy hitters, Michelangelo. I saw Raphael's tomb actually. That's in the Pantheon. Which is
all the Ninja Turtles.
All the Ninja Turtles. Yeah. Obviously, Da Vinci. I don't know if I saw anything. Who am I missing? Donatello. He was big. He was a big sculptor, right? That was his thing. So. Yeah. I can't remember if I saw Donatello. But yeah, the Uffizi. I mean, it's so many that I can't really remember off the top of my head specific pieces, because I was also there for 3 weeks. I went to a lot of museums.
Yeah.
Of course, we did the Accademia, which is really famous for David, statue of David. The Accademia is good. It's kind of pricey for what it is. So my advice would be, unless you really, really need to see the statue of David, you don't need to go. There's other good stuff there too. I think it's called something of the Prisoners, which are a lot of Michelangelo sculptures, and they're not completed, but they're all prisoners.
Okay.
It's pretty good. I think that's it. But unless you need to see David, you could probably skip it and spend more time in the Uffizi, so you don't get kind of museum burnout. I did a couple museums in Venice. I'm blanking on one. I think it was also an Accademia, and I can't remember exactly any of the pieces. I think that was more like medieval art, which I like. But and Venice is kind of overlooked as an artistic hub, but there's some great Venetian artists.
Right.
What I love about Venice is unlike a lot of other Italian cities that really leaned into Renaissance for a good reason. I shouldn't say Renaissance, neoclassical type. They kind of rebuilt their cities neoclassical. Florence is the epitome of this. Venice really retained its Gothic feel. They really which I love. That's my favorite type of architecture.
Yeah.
And St. Mark's is just this. I'd seen St. Mark's before in pictures and TV shows and shit like that, but it is so beautiful in person. That's the cathedral there.
Yeah.
It's Byzantine and kind of Middle Eastern, but also Italian. And it kind of epitomizes Venice as being it retains its Gothic feel to it. And I'll just say it, Venice was my favorite city.
Nice.
A lot of people, some people don't like it. And I could see that if you're there at a high season. I was there more of a shoulder season, even off season. Right. And I absolutely adored it. Venice is incredible. This is my kind of city. One, there's no cars, which I love. Nice. No cars or scooters, and I'll get to that.
Yeah.
It is shockingly beautiful, jaw-droppingly beautiful, just random back streets, and you just kind of are in a narrow street, and then you come upon a big plaza that no one's there, and it's just people's houses, and then you're in back streets again. There's a canal, and it's just really, really gorgeous. And we also did for modern art, there's the Peggy Guggenheim basically lived my dream life. And she just had this mansion on the banks of the canal. Would sip her coffee on, this beautiful terrace and her home. She would host parties and meet artists. And now her house has just been turned into a museum and has, original Picassos and Matisse and Miro's and all different sorts of modern artists. And that was a cool change up, because we had been seeing a lot of, in general, see a lot of Renaissance and medieval art when you're there, and Roman art. But It was cool to see some more modern art. So I definitely recommend going to see the Peggy Guggenheim. The exhibit that was there, I really didn't care for at all. Like the there's the regular museum, and then they'll like showcase an artist, and it was some Italian woman who she basically made spirals. Like that was her thing, and I just thought it was really kind of boring.
Well, it's still better than duct taping a banana to a wall.
Yeah, it is better than that, but it felt like, and even reading her biography, and I don't mean to like to criticize this woman, but she like grew up in the art world, and I think she was wealthy, and it kind of feels like she just found something to do, and because she was rich she could do it. I don't know her name, I'm not gonna look it up. But it felt like it was kind of forced, and just she had the connections, and that's why she could make a living making art, when I don't think it was very impressive. Like, yeah, there's some cool, it's almost like the Twilight Zone, that thing, like the spirally thing. It was like a bunch of shit like that. Like, sure, some of it's cool, but I that's not what I don't need to see that.
Yeah, there's quick side note, there's an artist who has worked with the organization that I previously worked with, and she's technically talented, but she found one theme and she just ran with it and did nothing else, just variations on that. And the theme was she would take silhouettes, she would paint silhouettes of people of different body sizes and genders and whatever, and then she would paint in like social media logos filling in, and then it's like, okay, yeah. So the first couple that you saw, like, okay, yeah, I get, like I said, she's a good artist, technically, right? Oh, and I understand the point that you're making about social media dominating everything about us, but she's got, ever since then, she's just done nothing but that. It's just different body shapes with covered in social media logos. You're like, okay, I get the fucking point. Okay, there's a baby made up of the Facebook logo and the X logo and the Instagram. Like, oh, now there's a fat woman with the X logo and the Facebook logo. And okay, but and then there's a whole family, but it's all just variations on the same thing. Like, okay, we get it. You've done 30 of these now. Stop.
So I can't remember where I went in Rome, what museums, if we did any, because I know we did the Vatican, which it's not a museum, but St. Peter's is insane. Like, so the Sistine Chapel is part of St. Peter. So the Sistine Chapel is like the Pope's church, if you think of it that way. And that's, of course, very famous, but that's just like a tiny part of St. Peter's. I guess it's even like, I don't know if maybe it's technically not part of St. Peter's, part of the Vatican, of course. And you're actually not allowed to take pictures in there, which is kind of cool, because they just like want you to enjoy it. And there's so many people, and they kind of rush you through. And it's incredible. But the church, St. Peter's, is unlike anything I have ever seen. And I've always heard it's the largest church in the world, but it is insane how large it is. And obviously it's not just large and blank. Like, there's art everywhere and sculptures and different chapels within it. And so that was very cool. The Pantheon's unbelievable, because the Pantheon's like 2,000 years old, and it's incredible that's still there. And just the scale that the Romans were working with is insane. I'm trying to, so I'm kind of just going on the fly here. So Pisa was cool. I mean, you go and you see the Leaning Tower, and they have the church, and it's very pretty. But I think for our podcast, was very cool about Pisa. And so there's this, it's called like the Field of, I forget. Basically, a bunch of like crusaders are buried there with soil from Jerusalem, which is really fucking cool. Or from even like Golgotha, which is where Jesus was crucified. So I thought that was very cool. Or that's the legend, right? And who knows? And there were people there who were not crusaders. There were guys buried there from like the 20th century, but there are stones there from like the 1200s, 1300s. But on the walls, and this is why I really wanted to go, on the walls, there's this medieval art, and a lot of it's like not in great condition, but they have retouched a bunch of it. And dude, some of this art is the most metal shit I have ever seen. It's called the Triumph of Death, and it is like the epitome of just batshit crazy like this giant devil thing, like eating people and demons fighting angels and like people in hell, and it is so crazy, and you just stand there looking at this like, how did this come from someone's brain? I'm trying to find pictures of it online, but I don't even see like the really metal one. I'm trying to find like Devil, like the Triumph of Death, and it is just so insane what is going on in this. And here it is. I'm gonna send this to you. Yeah, Camposanto, that's it, like the holy field. I just want to, I know this is bad radio, but if you're listening to this, type in the Triumph of Death, the Camposanto. It's like stock images. It's being really slow. So do you see it?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy.
I mean, so much of this is like, so back in the 80s, like when you had more, like a lot of heavy metal bands had painted album covers. Like this reminds me of that, like Slayer, Megadeth type stuff.
Yeah.
Iron Maiden.
Here, I'm sending you this. Is this what you're looking at? I just texted it to you. It's like this demon thing, and it's like birthing a person, I think, or like sucking them up through their like butthole. And there's like all these demons fighting. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
And cool. Shockingly and like insane to see in person. So if you're in Pisa, don't just do like the Leaning Towers is very cool. The church is beautiful. The baptistry is beautiful, but make sure you go see Camposanto for these I don't know if they're frescoes or whatever, but on the walls, because they get like increasingly more metal. And there's like the battle of good and evil, and it's like the epitome of just like medieval art, and it's very cool.
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up. So Rome, I'm blanking on what museums. Oh, we did see so we went to Rome twice because we started there and ended there. Gotcha. And I saw it said it was a Chagall exhibit, but it was really just one piece. And do you like Chagall? Do you know who that is?
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, Chagall. I like him a lot. He kind of has a not Cubist style, but I don't know how to explain it. It like feels somewhat folksy, but also high art. It's a very unique look. I've always liked him. And it was called like the White Christ or the White Jesus or something like that. And it's Jesus, but he's in like Jewish garb, and he's showing Jesus crucified because Jesus was a Jew. And like around him, there's like different pogroms going on. It's kind of like the different because Chagall was Jewish, and it's kind of like the different the strifes that the Jews have been through in different periods in time. And Chagall wanted Jesus to be like a more uniting figure. And I thought that was very cool, and how he actually represents like the ultimate Jew in a sense of like sacrificing himself and hardship and that sort of thing. Naples, I did the archaeological museum, of course. Unsurprisingly, the workers were on strike, so we only got to see like half of it. But they did lower the price at least. They're like, look, it's half price, but you can only do one floor, and that had a ton of like basically it's like tons and tons of sculptures. Like there are more Roman and Greek sculptures than you could even imagine in these museums.
Yeah.
Very cool, like giant ones of like Hercules and different Roman emperors, and it was very sweet. And that's probably it. So
did you do anything music related at all?
Music related? No, we didn't. I know like Naples is like the home of opera, where like opera was created. We considered it, but we didn't end up doing it.
Damn, I should have. It actually did cross my mind to send you like a list of Italian composers of like maybe you can find like, but like there's especially in the Renaissance, there were a lot of great Renaissance.
Actually, I'm wrong. We did see some music stuff, not music, but like in one of the museums. I'm blanking on which one. Might have been the Uffizi. They had a whole like history of music.
Okay.
So like different instruments that they like. Because I remember, there would be like old guitars and different sorts of violins and like that. And some of them, there's one that was really funny. It was like a giant horn that had like a big, I don't know if you know the name of it, but it was like comically big, and it was like a big swoop at the bottom. I just remember that. But yeah, we definitely saw a exhibit on different instruments throughout history. I can't remember what museum that was in. Yeah.
Well,
museums go ahead.
Next time you go to Italy, let me know, and I'll send you a list of composers.
All right. Yeah, cool.
But Niccolo Paganini is one of my favorite composers. We talked about him in the Satan episode, where we were talking about like
oh yeah, he's the one who sold his soul.
Yeah, well, supposedly that was the rumor where
Yeah.
because he was such a wicked violinist, and there were like multiple accounts back then of people claiming when they saw him perform live, they saw Satan above him, like manipulating him like a puppet.
Right.
Similar to, like,
That's
Iron Maiden.
so goddamn Italian to like see
Yeah. There's also, Salieri, the guy, Mozart's rival.
Yeah, of course.
And then there were a lot of great Italian composers.
Is it true, as someone who knows of musical history, is it true that like Amadeus kind of did Salieri dirty?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So there was supposedly some rivalry between them earlier in their careers, but towards the end of the careers, it seems like they were becoming a little bit more friendly. There's not a whole lot of evidence, but there was one letter that Mozart wrote to somebody, but it was something like, "Oh, I think he was writing it to his father." But he goes, "Anyway, father, I'm going to a concert tonight with Salieri. I will talk to you soon," or something like that. So it seemed like they might have patched things up, but it's
also just like his capabilities. Like, wasn't Salieri actually like also spectacular?
Yeah, he was pretty killer.
Yeah,
but he was also just kind of like a standard court composer. So,
okay.
But yeah, I think I brought this up for like one of my favorite lines from Amadeus, which is one of my favorite movies. But there's a line where Mozart is he's talking to someone in the king's court, and he's trying to get a position there, and he asks who's on the panel or whatever, and then he lists it off, and then he goes and Salieri. He goes, Salieri, the Italians. It's always the Italians. Yeah. So it was like a little bit of an in joke. So my former roommate Jim, who you met, like because he's half Italian too. So it was like a little inside joke where it's like around the house where it's like, if somebody forgot to wash the dishes, like Italians, it's always the Italians, dude. Or like somebody left the light on, Italians, dude.
Yeah.
But
I love that movie. Amadeus, I think, is such a good movie.
It's in my top 5 for sure, and it's I was lucky enough to see it performed. So at the Hollywood Bowl during the summer, they'll show movies there, and they'll have like a live orchestra playing.
Yeah,
and it's cool. So they had
very cool,
like one of my favorite movies, and it's played. And they had it's funny because the score is 90% Mozart, so it's also like a classical concert in addition to a movie showing, and it's being performed by the LA Phil, which is one of my favorite orchestras, playing. So I was like, oh man, like just kill me now. Like this is like all my favorite things right here.
I will say though, as much as like Italian is the language of opera, and it is a beautiful language, I got to use it a lot. I did like I practiced hard, and I got to use a lot of Italian. I got some good compliments from Italians. They're like, "Oh, how did you learn it? How did you learn this?" I was like, "I taught myself." Again, and it is, I'm not fluent in any way, but I'm conversational, especially like travel conversational.
Yeah.
And it was very fun to use. That being said, I do think German is an underrated language in terms of beauty. I think German gets a bad rap. I think German's a very beautiful, a very pretty language. And I think it's more of the stereotypes of like Hitler yelling at people that people just like always think German. But I like German opera is a thing, and I think it's very pretty.
Yeah. Well, that was actually that was in Amadeus.
So I know, that's why I'm saying he defends it. He's like, German, please, German. Like, let me do it in German, because he's Austrian and speaks German.
Yeah. And I like how the Italian guy in that film, he tells Mozart, he's like, but German is so brutal. It's such a brutal language. I mean, German when it's sung is pretty cool, but I don't know, it's so often it just sounds like, Hawking Louise.
I like it. I think it's a pretty language. I think there are ugly languages. I won't name them right now, but
there's so I watch a lot of cooking channels on YouTube, and there's this one German guy. Huh?
You watch cooking channels?
Oh yeah, I love food, dude. I love cooking.
Do you cook, or you just like to eat it?
I cook when I can. Every once in a while, like I'll see a cool recipe and I'll try it. But I just love the like just the process, the creative process of cooking. And so this is one German guy, and it's funny, he totally, because there are different types of German, like what do you call it? like accents, I guess, but there's also like well, this guy, he epitomized like the sort of happy German, but he's like wunderbar, so we're gonna do this and this is wunderbar. So he's just like, I was like, oh, I thought that was like a caricature. I thought that was like a Simpsons character, but you're actually here. You are like that's that's actually kind of cool. So.
I think the silly, like I think some of the Scandinavian languages are kind of like silly, and they are Germanic. Like English is a Germanic language actually, but it's such a hybrid language because of William the Conqueror. I won't go into that, but like I think German sounds cool, where like Dutch sounds silly. And I know that's not Scandinavian, but like Dutch to me doesn't have the eloquence of like a French, but it also doesn't have like the kind of like I think like the strong profundity of German. It's just kind of like this middle silliness. Like I've been to the Netherlands a couple of times. Same with like Norwegian and Swedish, Danish. They just kind of sound silly to me. But German I think is very, very nice sounding language.
So I heard that in Italy they're more what do you call it? Like they're more like appreciative of tourists speaking Italian. So if you kind of mess up a little bit, they're sort of like they're a little bit more accepting. Whereas in France, they're much more like if you're asking for a cup of coffee in French and you don't speak the language very well, like they're much more snobby. They're much more like
So I've been to France a few times. I speak a little French. Again, like Italian, I would need to like really practice it. And I was there 2 years ago and I used it. And what I think what you're saying was true. And actually I've heard Thomas Chardon Williams talk about that because he's from New Jersey actually, but married a French woman. And he's like my children because he's like a half black and then his wife is white. So, and he's like, my children just are like blonde hair, blue eyes, white kids. But he says, cause he was going to France his whole life and his mom, he said like even 15 years ago, and because he was saying this like a few years ago, let's say 10, 15 years ago, his mom who spoke like fluent French, but not native French would speak it to them. And they would be like, pretend not to understand her and things like that, being totally snobby. But it's like, now it's actually changed where it's not that. And I noticed this too, like they understand me and they don't act like they understand me, but they just switch to English. They're like, oh no, we like, okay, thank you, but no thanks. We'll just switch to English. Instead of what it used to be was like, it would be like a battle. They'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't understand, like that sort of thing when like they knew English and they understood your French. Where now it's just like, oh, like I would get that a lot. Like they would acknowledge I'm speaking French, but they were almost felt like they were doing me a favor of switching to English. Where it's like, no, dude, I'm trying to use my French. Where,
I was saying, isn't that a little condescending? Isn't it a little worse in a way where it's like, no, don't stop butchering our language. We'll just adapt to you.
Yes, and that's what it is and that is part of it too. They adore their language, understandably. In fact, French is my favorite language. And they would just be like, oh no, that's fine. I'll use English. Where in Italy, I found kind of both and they would switch. And sometimes I didn't even tweet this. I'm like, I'm just going to speak Italian at you till you acknowledge it, till like you switch back. Or sometimes I'll just get tired with it. But there were sometimes in Italy that like, I would just have conversations in Italian and the person either like didn't really know English. Maybe they're like a taxi driver or something, or someone on the street, or, they would just accept that they would like use their Italian knowing I'm not fluent, but we were conversational. Only a few times they would just like switch right away. I'd be like, come on, man. Like I'm trying here. Like I went out of my way to learn your language. I think, and lastly, I'll say, at least this was the case when I was living there. Spain, the English is not up to where it is in Italy and France. At least it wasn't then. That's actually why I lived there, was to teach English, because the government there realized that they're behind even Portugal, which has much higher English proficiency than Spain. And in Spain, like I backpack there and I would go days without using English sometimes because they just didn't know it, because Spanish is the second largest language in the world. But anyway, enough of that. Let's go on to what.
Well, yeah. So this will be a nice segue into the other subject. So while you were, just like basking in like the beauty of all of this amazing art. So what was that like? Just seeing like the intricacy and like the details of art, of like actual like real fucking art. Like that's gotta be pretty.
So actually, one last piece I did want to mention, and I tweeted this, so you might have seen it. There's this piece in Naples. This is not in the Archaeological Museum. This is it's called San Severo, and this is a little church. It's not even actually a church. It's like a mausoleum or something. It's like some rich family there has this space, a chapel, mausoleum, whatever it is, to their family. And in it has one of the most incredible pieces of art I had ever seen. And I read about this. I in the guidebook I got, it talks about it like this is a must see. I actually read a book about Naples before, on the trip and during the trip.
Yeah.
And it's called The Veiled Christ, and it is a sculpture of Jesus, shocker. And it is of him in like him lying down deceased and with a veil on him, but it's all like chiseled from marble.
Yeah.
And I tweeted this, and some people were like, wait, is that an actual veil or is that? No, I'm like, no, that's marble. Like this artist, I should do this guy justice because it's so incredible. Like this piece and one other in his name is Giuseppe San Martino, The Veiled Christ, and it's in the San Severo Chapel Museum. Okay, so it's a little museum, and it's a little pricey for what's there because there's not all that much there, but in terms of quality, it's one of the most stunning pieces of art you can ever see. My view on Naples is very mixed. It is definitely the most polarizing city I went to. I'm very happy I went. I wouldn't go back. Not because it's dangerous. And what's really funny is like my parents were like, oh no, you can't go to Naples. It's so dangerous. Like, oh my God, like don't go to Naples. Everyone's like, don't go to Naples. But in fact, we had a driver who drove us from Naples to Positano after the trip. And I didn't feel at all in danger when I was in Naples, like not once.
Right.
I'm like, dude, I go to fucking New York all the time, Philly, like New Orleans. We have real crime. But even still, I didn't feel like in danger at all. And he was like, oh, well, Naples actually used to be much more dangerous, but a new mafia took over and their new rule was don't mess with tourists. And he was like, and that was about 8 years ago. And my parents were in Italy in 2016. Right. So like 8 years ago, where maybe it actually was that dangerous. Yeah. And like people, you shouldn't go there. And he's like, oh no, the new Camorra, like they're called the Camorra there. Yeah. And it's like, we have a new family and their first rule was don't mess with tourists. And I thought, I'm like, that makes sense. Right. But Naples is insane. It is like crazy traffic and the scooters are nuts. And I'm very happy I went, but I don't think I would go back. But that piece, The Veiled Christ, is one of the most kind of breathtaking pieces you can ever see. And also in the same chapel, there's this like, I forget who it is, if it's a saint or someone, but he's like messing with a net, like a fishing net, and it's like kind of covering part of him, and his like leg muscles are chiseled like through, like it looks like the net is pressed up against it, and the whole thing is chiseled from marble. It like, how did someone do it? My favorite sort of art are the portraits and the paintings, but the sculptures are the most jaw-dropping to me. The most like, how did someone make this? Like you look at a Renaissance piece of art, a painting, or even like modern art, and they are incredible and beautiful. But I'm like, I get how someone made this because they're great at painting. Sure. But the sculptures are the most like mind-boggling pieces.
With painting, you can paint over your mistake, or you just get a new canvas. But with sculptures, like you have to get a whole new chunk of marble if you fucked up the first one. Like
I don't even understand. I don't. It's one of those things where it's almost like I want to watch someone do it from start to finish to fully comprehend the art, like artistry, not like the masterwork of it, the masterful. Well, again, it's hard to describe art, but if you're in Naples, which is a crazy city. Oh, and by the way, getting back to food real quick, pound for pound, Naples has the best food. It's also the best prices.
Interesting.
So that's another thing. Like the pizza is incredible. The food is amazing, but it's nuts. Like it is a nuts place to be. We stayed in the Spanish Quarter. There's this like tiny streets with scooters ripping around and people yelling, and it's crazy. But I'm happy I went. Don't know if I'd go back. But if you're in Naples, you find yourself in Naples, go to the San Severo Chapel and check out the Veiled Christ and that other piece that's in one of the corners. It's gorgeous. Yeah.
My cousin lived in Naples, Florida for a little bit, but I think that's a different Naples though.
Similar vibes. That's west coast of Florida, Naples, Italy. They're both hot.
Getting back to the sculpture thing, because I mean, like, I'm flabbergasted when there are a few like historical art accounts I follow on Twitter.
Yeah, sure.
And so each post will highlight either like a specific artist or a specific work, and seeing those sculptures of like cloth, and muscle tone, and
that's what these are.
Yeah, and it's fucking frightening how good those sculptures
I'm sure
were.
the Veiled Christ has been on one of those,
Sure.
and it's like that's what I mean. It's like he chiseled. That's the right term, right? Like chiseled.
Yeah.
Jesus
so.
Christ, like Jesus Christ's face in marble behind like a shroud.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? It is so unbelievable.
And it's funny because I'm really into like the history of visual effects of CGI, and cloth is a very difficult thing to do to pull off with computers. I mean, it's been getting better, but it's one of those
hair,
things where,
right? Like hair,
So, any flowing material, or if you have like a human where it's like they look, where it's like they're replicating human skin or muscle tone and stuff like that, but it's like you had to replicate like the skin moving over muscle is it's still a very difficult thing. But it's like even today without the tactile element of like chiseling stone with computers and shit, and people who are very talented and who have degrees in computer science and art, they're still struggling to emulate
it's like this Southern Italian guy in the 16th century chiseled like a better thigh, pushing it like the muscle through a fishing net than like CGI can make in 2024.
I'm sure you've seen this meme or like variations of it where it's like it'll show like this beautiful stone house, and it's like built by peasants in 1400 and then it shows like some modern like very like cubic house or building, and it's like designed by somebody with a college degree in 2020 or whatever.
It's like from RISD, and it's like it's some peasant, some like illiterate peasants with like a missing arm built this house that's still standing there.
Well, I'm glad that you had a wonderful artistic experience in Italy, and so I think it'll be interesting to contrast that with American museums in the current state of that.
I saw this article in the Spectator World from November 21st of this year. I think we can just basically read it. It's not very long. It's more of just an opinion piece by Mark Ostrike. I feel like I recognize the name probably from the Spectator who I follow. Do you just want me to kind of dive into it?
Yeah. We probably just summarize like the backstory of it. It's really like the museum part.
So the title is "The Death of the American Museum." The picture on the front is a dinosaur, but it's like, and people might not realize this, but it's like different parts. It's like the back of a stegosaurus, the head of a triceratops, the body of, it looks like a not T-Rex, but I'm blanking on, I actually know a hadrosaurus, that's it. And so it's like, and it's covered in in the rainbow flag.
and look below, there's a plaque under it too.
There's a plaque that says it's like the like, comment or forward send from Instagram. And it's the Death of the American Museum. Basically talks about how him and his son, who I guess live in Chicago, go, they basically skip school. He lets his son skip school so they can go to downtown Chicago to one of the city's iconic museums. He talks about this, where these museums came from, and they were originally constructed for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. Great book on that, by the way, called The Devil in the White City. That's kind of part true crime, part of like the creation of modern Chicago. And how he used to do this as a kid, and how how much wonderment and how much joy it used to bring him going to these museums. And I did want to ask you, like, did you have a museum or whatever? Like, are there any big ones in San Jose or anything? Even not big, just it was like important to you growing up.
Yeah, so we had a couple, and they were mostly in downtown San Jose. But there was the San Jose Museum of Modern Art, I believe, and that's exactly what it implies. And so that was all right. And we had the more famous one is the Tech Museum, I think it's called. And that one
that makes sense.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. I actually volunteered there for a year in high school. It's part of like some stupid program I was in. But yeah, it was very tech based. It was a sort of like, oh, like these are sort of like the modern like advancements in, like cancer detection and space exploration and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I even worked at one. So the university I went to, Santa Clara University, was actually started off as a mission, as a
Right. Jesuits.
Jesuit,
Yeah.
so we actually had our own little museum that actually worked out for like a year and a half, and so that was pretty cool. I mean, it's definitely I'm sure nowhere near as breathtaking as the stuff that you experienced, but there's pretty cool like art from like missionary art from like the 17 and 1800s, a lot of indigenous stuff too, and luckily this was before universities really got political, so it's like they were able to present a lot of indigenous art without the lecture. So it's just sort of like, hey, here's something interesting about the history of this land, and that was it. There's no, and because it was a Jesuit university, there's a definite religious element, but there not a whole lot of museum. Definitely in San Francisco, there was
of course
more museum stuff, but I was lucky. I got to go on a fair number of field trips to some pretty cool museums in the Bay Area. So
because I like to this day I love museums. I know some people like can't, like they would, it's the last thing they would want to do, but it is actually one of the things I miss most about living in a city is access to museums and the kind of art in general. Oh, another cool thing real quick about Venice. So obviously like people know like Venice only has like less than 50,000 residents. So and like everywhere there's tons of churches, right? So a lot of the churches just aren't being used anymore because there just aren't the people there, where it's like every neighborhood in Venice has multiple churches. So what's cool about that is now what they started doing is a lot of them have free art exhibits. So you just walk in, and one of the coolest art experiences I had in Italy was one of these. It was I don't know where she was from. She had an Asian name, let's just say. I don't know, but it was a really cool, it was like a kind of religious like art, and it was very, and I think there was like Gregorian chant kind of in the background, which like added this whole element to it. But I just remember I took this picture. I'm not a big I noticed this about myself, like I kind of stopped taking pictures with a lot of stuff because it just doesn't do it justice. I'm like, I could take a picture of every canal in Venice. It's not gonna, like, just one to remember it by or something like that.
I'm with you on that, and I even read a study that said that the more pictures you take of an experience, the less you remember it.
I mean, I believe it. And it's also just like, man, I'm looking at this gorgeous neighborhood or this gorgeous piece of art, and it's like, it's not going to do it justice if I take a picture of it. It's more so I try to like take stuff in more like with a handful of pictures, but I did take a picture of this one, and it's just like these bodies stacked on top of each other, like painting of bodies. I think the theme of this was kind of like life and death, and just like the soles of their feet, and it was just like very powerful. Maybe it was like a famine or a plague or something. Just the way it was done was like really moving, and I think the music might have gotten to me too, because it was like this deep sort of like religious music, this Gregorian chant type thing. But that was like, that's some of my favorite parts about traveling are not necessarily like the heavy hitters all the time, like of course the Uffizi is going to be amazing, but it's like these random serendipitous like forays into art and culture that like no one would, that wouldn't be in any guidebook, that no one like, we just happened to run into that on a tour that was like a back like the back streets of Venice tour. Like this is the tour that the regular ones don't take you on. And honestly, we stopped there so people could use the bathroom. Like that was it. And then we go in, and there's this like incredible art. That's what's cool about a place like Italy.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah. So anyway, and then growing up, even though I grew up much closer to New York City, I went to Philly a good amount because my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, lived. My mom's from Philly, and for 40 years she lived in a like an immediate suburb, right, like 5 minutes outside of Philly. And so my Papa Ben, we called him. He wasn't my grandfather, but he kind of acted like a grandfather figure because I never met that grandfather. Passed away well before I was born. And he would take me to the Museum of Arts and Sciences, it was called, in Philly. And that's like really, I loved dinosaurs as a kid. I was a huge dinosaur kid. I can name every dinosaur. I had every like toy dinosaur. When I was like 5 years old, I was saying like Diplodocus and shit like that. And that was always like, I think that's where my love of museums really comes from, was like that, being 4, 5, 6 years old, going to that museum in Philly, which I haven't been to since, so I'd like to go back. But anyway, so that's what this guy's on with his son. And of course, unlike the museums I just talked about, which didn't have any of this bullshit, by the way, like nothing political, even like the modern art ones. That's not the case here. So I'll start reading some of it. Our first stop is the Museum of Science and Industry. As a child, I adored this place, a shrine to trains, jets, tornadoes, and mechanical wonders of war. It was a place you could turn cranks and pull levers and feel the pulse of human ingenuity. Today, walking down its halls, something feels off. We pass a gift shop hawking freeze-dried ice cream and quote-unquote black creativity logo wear. Ahead, I spot a series of small rocket models, once the site of an interactive display that let guests launch their own creations. The magic is now gone, replaced by static miniatures. Then the piece de resistance, the career wall for the next generation of space explorers. Front and center, a picture of a transgender person with rainbow dreads gazes confidently out at the child walking by. The job title, NASA Space Environmentalist. Like, this almost sounds like
fuck is that?
Yeah. What exactly does this person do? I realize a chortle and my son is on to me. Oh, excuse me. I release a chortle and my son is on to me. He asks the $1 million question. I struggle for an answer that doesn't sound like a punchline. What is a space environmentalist? Likely the reason NASA is subcontracting space exploration, I can't help but think. Perhaps they're fighting against the gentrification of Mars. I honestly don't know, I reply. And then, like, this is the heart of our modern museums. It's kind of this sort of bullshit you can imagine. Where it goes from here. It's like even dinosaur exhibits at the Natural History Museum in London now immerse themselves in climate guilt rather than letting us marvel at prehistoric life. It's no longer enough to present history. We must be instructed on how to feel about it. And
it's sad because there was a woman. I'm not sure if she still follows me or if she's even on Twitter anymore. But she and I like she was like an old school. She used to be a librarian, I think, and she was very fed up with all this like intersectional crap. And she said, like the librarian's code back in my day was a good library should have everything, should have something to offend everyone. And I think the same can be said about a museum. I think this is like, here it is, just objectively, here are the facts, and do what you will with them. We're not here to tell you, if you're offended by it, that's on you. If you're, ecstatic by it, that's on you. But yeah, so this article, I thought would be like kind of a good contrast to like, what you experienced in Italy.
Man, I can't think of anything that was like, besides the Chagall exhibit, which because it was free, which was cool, and because it was just literally one piece of art. And then I have like different, like, here's what this quadrant means, and it's like kind of broken down and like, but that was more informative than. And I'll say it right here. Like, so here he says in this paragraph, museums across the country are shifting from educating to pandering. Take a look at the numbers. In the 1980s, American museums of all sorts were thriving, with over 500 million annual visitors. Their mission was clear: to preserve and display the greatest achievements of human civilization. But since even before the pandemic, attendance has been in steady decline, with some museums reporting decline anywhere from 20 to 35%. Which I think sucks, because I do think museums it's something that we've had for at least a couple hundred years, right? It used to be kind of like rich people had all the art, and you'd have, and then they started putting it more on display, and it did become like the Medicis were big on this, like kind of creating space that was what he's like it was somewhat of a shared wealth type thing in a way, where it was like, we're rich and we want to enrich our culture because we're so rich. And as much as the labor side of me was obviously against the robber barons and the tycoons of the late 19th, early 20th century, all of that. But like, there wasn't a part of them, and I just mentioned The Devil in the White City, that's part of it too, where it was about like creating great cities and competing for building the most beautiful like the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building, or in Chicago, these gorgeous skyscrapers, which now there's nothing that's made like that. It's all just about utility. It's about cost cutting. It's, there's not, like, once in a while you'll get some cool things, like modern things, but for the most part, it's all just a moneymaker. And it's like these cities are kind of shells of what they used to be, like the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, like my eighth grade, excuse me, not my eighth grade, my like junior year high school history teacher. Shout out Mr. Urban if you hear this. He in the summer he would work at Ellis Island, so he would go out of his way to pronounce these people how they're like it's like actually Andrew Carnegie instead of Andrew Carnegie, or it's like he would always be, and he would like go out of his way to pronounce it that way, or FDR, their last name's actually Roosevelt, not Roosevelt. Like it's one of those things that changed over time. But which is actually my grandfather's middle name is Roosevelt, which is actually very funny because his first name is Theodore. Yeah,
like the state of modern arts, particularly in the U.S., is disgusting. It's I was talking to a friend of mine. He visited me a year or two ago, and I was telling him about the arts district in L.A., downtown L.A., and I'm pretty sure I mentioned it on the show before. And it's like, long story short, there's a lot of like modern garbage, and like luckily the galleries are free, but most of it is really bad. And so I was telling my friend, I was like, I've heard from multiple different sources who do not know each other that so much of the modern art scene is just money laundering. And he's like, I'm curious about like how that works. And so I saw this meme and I sent it to him. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is how it is. I actually have it right here. So 1 second. Come on. Is that?
Well, yes, I've heard that too, and I think that was a big thing with like Hunter Biden's art.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So here it is. Millionaire makes $20 million in 2020. Millionaire hires artist to make art for $25,000. Artist puts one streak on canvas. Millionaire thanks artist, has art appraised by an appraiser in his same circle of friends. Appraiser values artwork at $20 million. Millionaire donates $20 million to museum to get $20 million tax write-off. Millionaire pays no taxes in 2020. Me at a museum. This is stupid. It's just a line on a canvas. Hipster next to me. No, you just don't understand it because you're uncultured. Like, I think that's actually a pretty good, pretty accurate summary of how like the modern art world operates.
Yeah, man. A ton of it is just money laundering. And I think what did Hunter Biden sell? Like nothing? Like wasn't it like just like a space of nothing?
I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't really look at his paintings. I did. I think I retweeted this. It was it was a person, a typical meme format. I don't remember which one, but it was somebody on stage explaining something almost like in a TED Talk format. And they're saying the reason why modern art is the way it is because we don't want to have a repeat of the Hitler incident. So it's like we don't want to tell somebody that their art is bad, or else.
Yeah, that's true. Very good. Well, let's finish this up.
Yeah.
So he goes, I noted this line. He goes, and so the Native American artifacts once proudly displayed are now shuttered and shrouded. Entire exhibits are shrouded as the museum is the first to comply with new federal guidelines, blocking the display of Native artifacts if they don't have consent from the Indian tribes, erasing any chance to see, let alone learn from them. Here, the modern museum doesn't just pander, it hides. My son peers around the darkened halls asking what happened. He's been here before and seen them. I tell him it's complicated, which is parental shorthand for this is ridiculous. The idea that we cannot even look at these objects out of some performative shame is an affront to the very purpose of museums. I was reminded of that time John Ashcroft hid a two-naked statue of Lady Justice in drapery. This was no less absurd. Museums are meant to preserve heritage, not cower from them. I don't remember. I don't know the John Ashcroft thing, but
yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I do remember it's like when certain dignitaries from like Muslim countries will visit like Italy or France or something, they'll like make demands. I think it's really shitty when they give in. Sometimes they don't. I do give credit to the French ones. I think they were having like Iranians there for like a lunch. And the Iranians like refused to have wine served, and the French were like, "This is France. We drink wine at lunch." And it's like, but I have seen it's like you'll see, there'll be a picture and there'll be next to some statue, and there'll be like like a drape over it so that they don't see the penis or whatever,
right?
Because Muslims will be terrified of penises. That's science. The last thing I have here is Museums, after all, were once guardians of our collective memory. The very word comes from the Greek museon, a place dedicated to the Muses. That's the name of the podcast.
Hey,
the goddesses of the arts and sciences. That's who the Muses are. The first museon, established in Alexandria in 3rd century BC, was home to the famous library, a place where scholars didn't just preserve knowledge, they expanded it. And that's, he just kind of sums up by saying, I can't help but wonder what will be left for my son when he's grown. Will museums offer something grand, or will they become just another screen and an endless sea of distractions?
So I just want to elaborate on this, like the sort of TikTokification of modern museums. So I'll just read this real quick. My son and I head to the SpaceX Dragon capsule exhibit. This should be awe-inspiring, real mission-flown hardware, yet the capsule itself feels like an afterthought, buried beneath a barrage of LED screens. The display could easily be mistaken for a Vegas casino floor. Flashing lights, flying graphics. I try to point out the capsule to my son, but it's like shouting into the void. We're bombarded by low-quality YouTube-style videos playing on endless loops. Whatever awe this artifact might have inspired is drowned out by noise. There's no tactile engagement here, no chance to touch, to interact, to fail and try again, no space for wonder. It's all loud, tasteless high notes without a bit of thoughtfulness. The things that used to make this place magical are gone, replaced by digital entertainment that's not even good at being entertainment. Museums like MSI aren't competing with the digital world. They're poorly imitating it. And I think that is a key thing right there, because so one thing that was big, it's not technically in the Bay Area, it's a little south of it, but the Monterey Bay Aquarium, they had this exhibit where anybody can just reach down and touch a stingray.
Sure. Lots of aquariums have that.
But it's just sort of like that is slowly disappearing.
Well, I think here, like, museums shouldn't try and compete with like technology or anything like that. It should be like a different experience. Like that's the appeal of them. It's not something that you can do every day. It should be like a trip, right? Like either a school trip or a trip with a parent to kind of, or with friends even. Like where I'm from, it's called the Liberty Science Center was very cool. You could do different things, like, they would have us hold hands or something, or like touch shoulders, and then like send an electric current through us or something like that. Or they'd have this crawling thing where you have to like feel your way around. It's actually pretty scary. And you like kind of drop and go up. I don't even know if they still have that. It wasn't very safe, but it was very cool. And it was interactive, and that should offer a different experience than just like pandering, like telling you what to think about, basically make you feel guilty, to talking about like environmentalism, unless that's like what the place is about. Like the sciences, you want to talk about how these sorts, like it should teach you about that stuff, sure, but not if you're going to see like dinosaur bones, right? It shouldn't compete with something that kids or even adults can access every day. It should be its own sort of experience that is reserved for, and that will be timeless, because these apps will run out. Like there'll be something else that's created, and everyone will shift to that, and the next generation will have a different app, and museums will still be there. And I think that's something special, and it should kind of like preserve that. What, like he says here, it should preserve human progress and history, and the different cultures and civilizations throughout the world, and whatever we can preserve, like that should be something that cities especially, or even towns, strive to compile.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. And a friend of mine went to the Academy, like the Oscars Museum here in LA. And he said it was mostly really cool, but they had, at least at the time that he went, this is like a year or two ago, they had a George Floyd exhibit for some reason. I don't know what that has to do with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And he was just like, it was so forced. Like there's no reason for that. But man, it's obnoxious. And especially like when you see politics creeping into places that, into fields that should not be politicized. So I think it was last year. It was the first time I went to the La Brea tar pits here in LA, which is kind of an iconic place. And but there's a natural history museum, and so we're walking around, and it's a pretty cool place. And so it's funny because there was I wish I'd taken pictures of this just to point out the absurdity of it. So it's like there was one plaque that was talking about how, despite the fact that these bones are millions of years old, scientists are still able to learn a lot about these ancient creatures, like their gender, what they ate, how big their family, blah, this and that. And so they had like this part. It was all like it was like a little archaeological portion, and there was glass and separating you and then they had like actual archaeologists, and they're dusting off bones and they're labeling stuff, and there was a person there and they had a name tag and it said they them, and it's sort of like you just have a plaque saying we can tell the gender of a dinosaur from fucking millions of years ago.
I'm sorry, did you just assume that woolly mammoth's gender?
Exactly. And so I wish I take, and like they looked very stereotypical. It was obviously a woman, but like very short hair and very like sort of trying to present themselves as masculine, but not. And they're dusting off bones. I'm like, why the fuck are you here? Why the fuck would you have that on your? But it's just sort of like, and it's funny because my friend, he's very progressive. He's not woke, but he's pretty progressive. But like I kind of elbowed him. I didn't say anything. I just kind of elbowed him a little bit. When we saw that, and he goes, "Yeah, I know." I see the absurdity, dude. Like,
it's very funny.
But I don't know. Maybe there's, maybe there will be a little bit more of an effort to I don't want to say recolonize museums, but at least to kind of push back against this stuff. I mean, like not museum related, but Joe Rogan's comedy, his comedy club, the Comedy Mothership.
Yeah.
Every guest has to check in their smartphones. Like you can't bring it into the actual.
Oh,
venue.
really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because he's like, I want this to be a place where comedians can take risks and they don't have to worry about being shamed because somebody films a joke that went wrong and it blows up. I don't know. Maybe that's something that will catch on. Maybe there's a little bit of like no phones, just go in and experience it as it is. I don't know. I hope that happens at museums. So
yeah, I think we are turning the tide a little, but at the same time, it's like who are the people who become librarians, who work at museum, who work for unfortunately, I feel like the nonprofit sector has become more and more homogenized in thought. Again, I work for a nonprofit, so it's not everyone, of course, but and you'd be surprised. I think there's more diversity than people think. I know it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but at the same time, it's who are the loud voices? Like when there was that San Francisco museum, this was happening during the Great Awakening, where they had some guy who was like jokingly, some head there, some director, administrator was like, "Oh, don't worry, we're not getting rid of like all white artists," and he actually had to like retract that and then got fired or something.
He was pressured into resigning. But yeah,
exactly. And like he was making it, and like no, everyone agrees with him.
Yeah,
like the vast majority of people agree with him. Like, but they're not the loud voices, and I think those loud voices have gotten quieter, and they've just been, people aren't taking that shit anymore. But at the same time, I don't know, man. Like the people who are in the, what are they called? Not collators, curators. Like curators. It just feels like in a lot, especially these cities that tend to be a lot more liberal, that might be switching a little. It's like they're just the ones who are making these statements, making these plaques, giving the subjectivity to something that really doesn't need it. So we'll see. I don't know. I still love museums, and we were members of the Whitney for a year, and you go twice, it pays for itself, so that was pretty cool. We saw like the Hopper exhibit there. A lot of them are still good, but there is a lot of bullshit.
One last thing, and then we'll close this up. But so in LA we have the Getty, which is museum. We actually have two of them here, but that's like the home of like real fucking art and architecture and sculpture. And I have I won't say who it is, but they're someone that I know, and they're really into art. And They're very progressive. But it's funny. So I have not been to the Getty yet. I'm dying to. But so I was just talking like, oh, like, you know, any cool like art museums, like any favorite art galleries in LA, and they brought up the Getty, and they're like, yeah, I mean, you know, it's mostly just a testament to, you know, straight white men, but it is pretty amazing. And this is like, so I like that sentiment of like this person who's so politically captured still has to admit, yeah, I'm sorry, like Greek and Roman and Italian art is still spectacular. I'm sorry. Like it's just like,
we did it, Joe.
Exactly.
We broke the progressive glass ceiling.
Exactly. But you know, but stuff like that where it's like, you know, there's that quote, it's like be so good they can't ignore you. I hope that you know, in the long run, real artistry from every corner of the world. This isn't just like a Eurocentric thing. From everywhere can transcend politics and ideology.
Is it bad? Is it bad that when I was in Italy, I was like kind of hoping that there'd be some like environmental activists? Like I was kind of hoping it happened. Oh, I kind of wanted it to happen. I thought that'd be really funny and just like,
dude, I don't blame you, man. Every time I drive in downtown LA, I'm sort of like, please, I hope there's some like pro Hamas activists blocking the street, please. Like, oh man,
yeah, that'd be very funny.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, real quick, and then we'll really wrap it up.
Yeah,
Speaking of that, have you seen? There's like some Spanish show, like from Spain, that I don't know what it is, but the clip was going viral where it has like, you know, two activists and they like throw paint on something and like glue themselves to it, and that guy just walks up to him and shoots them both in the head. Have you seen that? I was like in a Spanish TV show.
No, I haven't.
I'll try and find it and I'll send it to you. It was very funny.
I mean, it's one of those where it's like you don't condone it, but it also sounds very cathartic.
Yeah. It was like he doesn't say anything, he has to argue with him, he just shoots them both in the head.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right, Benjamin.
All right,
you're back.
I'm back for good.
Damn.
Till the next time.
Well, stay reckless and fight the crits.
Fight them.